and we are going to start, and hopefully the others will join as we go along. Once again, good evening, everyone joining us this evening from across SADC region and beyond, of course. Welcome to today's webinar, which is themed Policy and Governance of Groundwater Resources. A timely and significant discussion, especially as we convene just a few days after World Water Day celebration, which was on the 22nd of March. And as you all know, this year's theme was glaciers preservation, which draws attention to the vital importance of glaciers in sustaining freshwater supplies and pressing challenges posed by the accelerated melting of these glaciers. My name is Getty Shinder, and I am honored to serve as your host on today's event. This gathering brings together young professionals, as you all know, experts, policymakers, and advocates from the SADC regions to deliberate on shaping the future of groundwater governance and sustainable management. Groundwater serves as the lifeline of many communities within the SADC region, underpinning drinking supplies, agriculture, industry, and ecosystems. And we know that despite significant groundwater often remains underrepresented in policy dialogues and governance structures. The recent emphasis on glacier preservation during the World Water Day underscores the interconnectedness of surface water with groundwater. As glaciers melt, they impact river flows and groundwater recharge, highlighting the necessity of integrated water resource management strategies. We all know that today's focus is really on groundwater, illuminating this hidden water resource and exchanging ideas, strategies, and innovative solutions to ensure the sustainable management of the water resource. We recognize the importance of young professionals in playing a big role in driving change and influencing policies to safeguard groundwater for present and future generations. So before we proceed, I see Sechaba has shared the agenda. Before we proceed, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed speakers joining us today. We are very, very privileged to have experts who will share their insights and knowledge on the critical topic today. I also wish to acknowledge all our young professionals. This will not be possible without you, so we are always excited to see you on the call, and your dedication to groundwater research, governance, and of course capacity building is truly, truly commendable. So thank you very much, and you all deserve like a virtual round of applause. So today's session, as we can see on the program today, we have three main speakers. Our keynote speaker is Dr. Muchaneta Munamati. She will present on effective transboundary groundwater and aquifer governance. And we have a guest speaker, Dr. Victoria Shifidi, who will present on water policy, governance in transboundary basin, giving a lesson learned from the Okavango River Basin. And last but not least is our YP representative, who is Ms. Rosa Domingos. She will present a little bit on capacity development. So her presentation will be on Skill Up, Stand Out, leveraging MOOCs for self-development. As per our tradition, we will move into the quiz winner announcement, and Sechaba will be announcing our winner for this event. And last, we will have our Q&A where you, the audience, will be able to engage directly with our speakers. So let me quickly go through our housekeeping rules first. When you are not speaking, kindly keep your microphone on mute. And you are free to drop your questions in the chat as we proceed with the program, but you can also write them down and have them ready at the dedicated Q&A session at the end. And we also ask you to complete the attendance register. So Sechaba will put it in the chat. And there will also be an evaluation form at the end of the webinar. So we just kindly ask you to fill in the evaluation form at the end of the webinar. Okay, so I will officially move and start the session. Where I would like to invite on stage, on the virtual stage, our keynote speaker, who is Dr. Muchaneta Monamati. So I would kindly ask her to put on her video so that I can put her on stage, help her move to the stage, the virtual stage. And I would like to warmly introduce her when she's seated on the stage with me. So Dr. Monamati, can you please switch on your video? Okay, so Dr. Monamati is a national is a national program specialist at the UNESCO Regional Office for Southern Africa in Harare, where she is responsible for coordinating water activities in the region under the UNESCO's IHP program. She also supports the implementation of various extra budgetary programs focusing on climate change and adaptation, groundwater management, disaster risk reduction, and transboundary water cooperation. You can see it's a mouthful, guys. Dr. Monamati has a strong background in water resources management. She obtained her PhD in 2020 from the University of Zimbabwe, specializing in sustainable water and sanitation systems in sub-Saharan Africa, which is, of course, very vital for our region. She has published several scientific papers in peer-reviewed journals and has presented technical papers at conferences on topics including soil and water conservation, water resource management, and sanitation. Her presentation today will be titled Effective Transboundary Groundwater and Aquifer Governance. Dr. Monamati, thank you very much for making time to join the young professionals this evening. We appreciate you and we are looking forward to hearing your presentation. Doctor, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Katie, for that introduction. Allow me to share my presentation. Katie, for that introduction, and I'm not going to reintroduce myself. Just to say that I'm delighted to be here with you, all of you, at the SADC-GMI Young Professionals webinar. I am excited to share insights on policy and groundwater management. This is a topic which is of importance, especially as we face challenges of water security and climate change. So I look forward to engaging with all of you during this presentation and hearing your thoughts and experiences as young professionals in the field of groundwater management. So before we go into the presentation proper, I think it will be good to just set a scene, just to understand the status of groundwater, the importance of this resource, the critical role of groundwater resource. I think you have already highlighted it. It can never be overemphasized. We know that groundwater constitutes 30% of the world's freshwater resources and 90% of the world's liquid fresh water. And approximately 2 billion people rely on this resource for their drinking water needs. However, if you look at the consumption, it is increasing mainly due to population growth and agricultural demands. And as we speak now, many regions are experiencing over-extraction of this resource and increasing pollution also of groundwater, which is threatening the reserves and affects the connected lakes and rivers. So as groundwater is depleted, you find out that the cost of the resource also increases, and this leads to reduced access for poorer populations especially, which then makes it very critical to have effective governance frameworks in place in order to protect the groundwater resources for various reasons, from environmental, economic, and social reasons. So we've been talking about groundwater governance. There was the mention of governance, management, policy, but I think it will be a good before we go into the actual discussion to just establish a clear understanding of what this key concept mean, because many times you find that governance and management are used interchangeably, yet they are distinct terms. So while there's no universal agreed definition of governance, for the sake of this presentation, we're going to use the following working definition. So we'll define governance as comprising the promotion of responsible collective action to ensure the control, protection, and socially sustainable utilization of groundwater resources, as well as aquifer systems for the benefit of humankind and dependent ecosystems. So this action is facilitated by an enabling framework and guiding principles. So if you look at the governance, groundwater governance, it's advocating for long-term arrangements carefully established through a consultative, a transparent, participatory approach, which are essential for effectively monitoring and managing groundwater resources to achieve water security. Then you look at management now. It basically comprises of measures, interventions, actions, and activities that aim to control groundwater abstraction and also to prevent the degradation of groundwater quality, typically with the objective of ensuring sustainable freshwater provision and preserving the desired environmental and ecosystem conditions that depend on groundwater. For policy, we can go with the definition, define it as a set of conditions which are oriented towards a long-term purpose or to a particular problem. Oh, I was showing the wrong slide, sorry. So because of the nature of groundwater, there are challenges when we talk of groundwater governance, mainly because of the invisible nature of this resource. It also means that it's poorly understood, and this makes it difficult to assess the impacts on their use and pollution, which may become apparent over long periods. So groundwater governance, therefore, must account also for the large diversity of the groundwater resource, the many users, and also the varying impacts of their use, including both source and point source and diffuse pollution. Because of the nature also of the groundwater, it is a common pool resource. This leads to challenges in managing the unsustainable levels of exploitation and depletion, as individual users cannot exclude others from accessing it. And even when users can collaborate, they also struggle to manage the remote impacts of groundwater pumping, for example, on other resources and the environment. And this actually complicates the governance efforts. Additionally, the uncertainty regarding interactions between groundwater and surface water complicates resource management, which can also lead to environmental impacts. And we have the issues of changes in hydrological regimes due to climate change, which can alter groundwater recharge rates and increase the risk of seawater intrusion, for example, as well as pollution. Seeing that many aquifers cross administrative and international borders, this necessitates cooperation and collaboration among authorities. And this must be based on mutual trust as well as transparency. Then the next one, now we're moving on to the strategic framework for groundwater governance. So looking at the challenges, the complexities of groundwater governance, it therefore calls for a well-structured framework that can help to address these complexities as well as challenges associated with groundwater management, groundwater governance, ensuring that it meets the needs of both people and the ecosystem. So we have a strategic framework for groundwater governance, which operates at three levels, three governance levels. We have the policy level, we have the strategic level governance, we have the local level. So at this policy level, this is where you have the processes, a number of processes by which a nation, a country establishes its objectives for groundwater and integrates those objectives into policies with water, land, or environmental policies, and try to align and harmonize them with other policies related to groundwater. Then at the strategic level governance, now we're looking at the institutions and your instruments, which are designed by a nation to align the stakeholder behavior and actual outcomes with policy objectives. Local level governance, basically the organizations and institutions that control the actual outcomes on the ground and respond to the rules and incentives from the strategic level governance, which includes your local authorities, river basin organizations, local collective management institutions, and individual well owners. Now, looking at that strategic governance framework for governance, groundwater governance, you can extract some main elements of groundwater governance and management. And these main elements involve translating the policy principles, the overarching policy principles into actionable frameworks through laws and regulations, as illustrated in the diagram as shown. But if you look at the effective implementation methodologies, which are crucial for achieving the intended outcomes, they're particularly given that groundwater is often perceived as a private resource linked to land ownership, and this complicates the regulation as well as top-down governance. So because of this, decisions about individual wells are typically made by landowners, and this makes it challenging for governments even to regulate groundwater withdrawal and use, especially where there are limited resources. It is therefore essential that we have the private sector, the public sector, as well as the communities, the local communities, the individual well owners, coming together and participating in the governance processes. So as governments, they must fulfill the critical role of being custodians of groundwater, recognizing the common good aspects, while also promoting policies which ensure that there is access of water, especially to vulnerable groups, to smallholder farmers, to women, and thereby ultimately contributing to sustainable development. Then moving on to a transboundary aquifer governance. So just for the benefit of those who may not be aware of what an aquifer is, I know we are all groundwater experts, young professionals here, but just for the sake benefits of some of those who may not know, just to define an aquifer, we're talking of an underground permeable water-bearing geological formation. So when water falls on the ground, as precipitation, be it rain or snow, it soaks into the ground and is filtered by the soil on its way down to the aquifer, where it can stay for days or even thousands of years, and eventually maybe goes to the streams, to the rivers, to lakes if it's not extracted. So when you talk of a transboundary aquifer now, or an aquifer system, a system where there are a number of connected aquifers, now it has parts situated in different countries, and this creates challenges. So with thinking of challenges of transboundary aquifers, while the drivers or stress for domestic as well as transboundary aquifers are generally the same. You find that the introduction of political boundaries in transboundary aquifers, it changes the whole situation. It creates specific challenges for groundwater, for governance of transboundary aquifers, as actions taken in one country can have significant impacts on neighboring countries. For example, heavy groundwater abstraction on one side of the border, as shown in the diagram, can lead to lowering of the water table in adjacent countries, thereby affecting their water resources. In some cases, you can find that abstraction can actually cause groundwater flows to reverse. You see that in the diagram B. And this actually further complicates the resource management. So groundwater abstraction can affect systems that are hydraulically connected to the aquifer, where you talk of reducing river flows, you talk of impact on the groundwater-dependent ecosystems, and also contamination on one side of the border can spread across political boundaries, leading to severe impacts on neighboring countries and also complicating efforts to remediate the aquifers. So because the extent of aquifers can vary, there is also a question which many raise, especially when you talk of joint management and monitoring. Is it important to maybe cover the whole aquifer or maybe just concentrate on the hotspot areas? So where transboundary impacts are most likely. So this is one of the questions which arises when you talk of transboundary aquifers. Then, so talk of complexities now, because there is need for cooperation when we talk of transboundary aquifers. So if you talk of complexities, there are a number of challenges, there are a number of obstacles in aquifer sharing countries, which may complicate this cooperation and collaboration. There's issue of absence of legal framework, lack of awareness. You talk of political will, tension and inequities, maybe insufficient financing. You also talk of capacity gaps and data sharing issues. So what is the status of transboundary aquifer cooperation in the world? So as UNESCO and the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, we are custodians of SDG 6, indicator 6.52, which tracks the percentage of transboundary basin areas with operational arrangements for water cooperation and publishing progress reports every 3 years. So an operational arrangement basically is a formal treaty or an agreement between countries that includes existence of a joint body, regular communication between countries, maybe meeting at least annually, joint management plans or objectives, regular data exchange compiled by relevant national institutions. So when you look at these criteria, these operationality criteria, they ensure that cooperation is effective on the ground and not just merely a signed agreement without any implementation. So in terms of existing operational arrangements, only 43 countries have operational arrangements covering at least 90% or more of their shared water basins. When you talk of sub-Saharan Africa, for example, the situation is intermediate, where you find many countries are lacking operational arrangements or facing difficulties in obtaining necessary aquifer data. So most operational arrangements for transboundary aquifers were initially developed at river basin scale, with groundwater often considered only within broader agreements. Few agreements focus specifically on aquifers. So we have arrangements which can range from managing large aquifer systems shared by multiple countries to addressing local groundwater use issues. So in terms of UNESCO's contribution to improved aquifer governance, the resolution of the United Nations Assembly on the Law of Transboundary Aquifers encouraged UNESCO Intergovernmental Hydrological Program to provide aquifer sharing countries with its scientific and technical assistance. As such, as UNESCO, it has assisted a number of countries, a number of member states to carry out assessments in transboundary aquifers and also facilitate the establishment of operational agreements. So I'm going to focus on the Stampriet transboundary aquifer system, which is located or shared between shared by Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa. It consists of two confined sandstone aquifers, which are laid by unconfined Kalahari aquifer units. So this is a prime example of effective transboundary aquifer governance through multi-country cooperation. I'm going to call it MCCM going forward. So this MCCM was developed during the project which was implemented by UNESCO from 2013 to 2022, which was called Governance of Groundwater Resources in Transboundary Aquifers. So the MCCM basically is a governance approach which was agreed by the governments from these three countries to consolidate technical results from the greater projects. But the main goal of the MCCM is to ensure that there is joint collection and exchange of data and information among the SADC countries, supporting the SADC information management system. So the MCCM therefore aims to provide joint strategic assessment and advice to SADC countries on management issues related to groundwater resources. So it's this establishment is significant in the fact that it represents the first cooperative arrangement for transboundary aquifers in Southern Africa since the establishment of since the adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals. And also this SADC MCCM, if you look at the diagram, it operates under the Groundwater Hydrology Committee as part of the ORASECOM's technical task team, ensuring that there is support from ORASECOM. And it includes focal persons from three participating countries, along with technical experts in hydrology, legal matters, institutional frameworks, and agenda perspective. We have SADC-GMI supporting this SADC MCCM as an invited member, promoting sustainable groundwater management and addressing groundwater challenges in the SADC region. So the process now of establishing this MCCM. So it was a result of consolidated efforts between the member states. It involved a detailed assessment of the aquifers. We're utilizing a multidisciplinary method, which was developed by UNESCO and International Groundwater Resource Center, IGRAC. And this involved the collection of and processing of national data across various domains, including hydrological, socioeconomic, environmental, gender, legal, and institutional aspects. And this data was harmonized across the three countries involved, enabling a joint assessment of the resource. And based on this harmonized data, there was a borehole database comprising of over 6,000 boreholes with more than 10 attributes each. And 40 thematic maps were also developed, which provided insights into the groundwater levels, bore yield, the geochemistry, as well as the groundwater quality. These maps and this information is accessible via the Orasicom information system and allows stakeholders to visualize and utilize the information for better groundwater management. So in terms of ownership, you find that experts from the different countries were involved in the assessment. There were regional meetings held on rotational basis among the 3 countries. And the stakeholder consultations involved a variety of a diverse set of stakeholders. So just a key consideration of this groundwater governance mechanism. The SADC groundwater resources, they are not covered by the revised SADC protocol on shared water courses or the Orasicom agreement because of the lack of hydraulic connectivity, hydraulic connection with the Orange Senko River. And also, so which means establishing this MCCM will actually facilitate the development of state-specific rules for interstate behavior, also enabling joint investment, development, and monitoring of the groundwater resources among the 3 countries. The lessons learned from this process, we talk of it was observed that there was no size-fits-all approach for institutionalizing cooperation over transboundary aquifers due to the unique social, environmental, cultural, and political context, and also careful planning, resource mobilization, and consultations are very essential, especially when you're doing the transboundary aquifer assessments. And also engaging high-level decision makers, like what was done during this process. Ministers were engaged. It was very beneficial, especially for securing buy-in for key decisions, such as this model of the MCCM. And a significant amount of resources were involved and used for field work, for data collection, and also for verification of their data, data related to geology, to hydrogeology, as well as environmental issues. Then also the enforcement of jointly agreed management rules is greatly enhanced by accountability mechanisms, for example, transparency also with regard to the rationale behind some of these measures, the data or models used, and also the distribution of costs and benefits. It was also important that notice that building trust among stakeholders, ensuring transparent negotiations, promoting inclusiveness were essential for successful groundwater governance. And the capacity building and training also was found to be integral to the transboundary aquifer assessment processes and the establishment of this cooperation mechanism. So also integrating agenda issues into the assessment, into monitoring and governance of groundwater was also found to be very beneficial, as groundwater and gender are closely linked to the Sustainable Development Goals. So just, I think that's my last slide, talking of take-home messages. Having said all this, I think it is essential that countries commit themselves to developing an adequate and effective framework for groundwater governance. Without it, we'll continue to have problems, challenges related to how we manage, how we use the water, how we extract the groundwater resources. And this actually requires that governments take the lead and also assume responsibilities to set up and maintain fully operational groundwater governance structures. And this, from what I've said, this has to include developing the knowledge base, strengthening institutional capacity, establishing the laws, regulations, and also ensuring the enforcement, policy and planning as well, ensuring stakeholder participation, and also availing the appropriate resources, financial resources. So it is therefore important that countries ensure that the policies and plans are fully implemented for sustainable groundwater management and governance. Thank you very much, Getty. Thank you for your attention, everyone.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for your very, very enlightening presentation. Your insights into the complexity, into the complexity of water governance, as well as management, and the details of, taking cognizance of the difference between governance and management, really, really brought thought-provoking initiatives for young professionals to be taking this into consideration when they are referring to governance and management. Thank you very much for this presentation. We greatly appreciate your in-depth analysis and thought-provoking approach, especially when it comes to strategic framework for groundwater governance. For water resource management. Thank you, Doctor. We want to move into the next presentation. I know our young professionals do have questions for you, but we usually have the questions at the end, at the dedicated Q&A section. So for now, young professionals, just note down your questions and we will be able to attend to them at a later stage. Okay, so Dr. Mucha, can you kindly stop sharing your screen? Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so to maintain our momentum, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you our next speaker, who is today our guest speaker, none other than Dr. Victoria Shifidi. Dr. Victoria Shifidi is a lawyer and a transboundary water resources specialist with over 15 years of experience in water policy, governance, integrated water resource management, climate change, and sustainable development. She has a proven record of collaborating with state and non-state actors on transboundary water governance, including serving on national climate change committees and contributing to international partnerships. Dr. Shifidi brings a comprehensive understanding of the legal environment, legal and environmental, as well as social political challenges in water management, particularly in Southern Africa. She has with a strong focus on policy development and governance framework for sustainable water use. So her presentation will be on water policy and governance in transboundary basins. She will give us the lessons from the Okavango River Basin. Dr. Shifidi, the virtual floor is yours.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes. Can you kindly switch on your video?
Okay. Are you going to share the presentation or should I share it instead? Okay, sorry.
You are welcome to share the presentation from your end, Doctor.
Right.
Sechaba, you can also, it seems like the network is not quite good. Perhaps it would be better if you switch off the video, Doctor. I mean, the young professionals have seen your face and they will definitely walk up to you when they meet you and introduce themselves. I find it very, very important to have our videos on, just to have our young professionals familiar with the guest speakers. But because of the network, perhaps we can ask Sechaba to share the presentation, and then Dr. Victoria can just follow as we proceed with the presentation.
I'll be focusing on water policy and governance in transboundary basins, lessons learned from the Okavango River Basin Code in short. And it's a very short discussion that I'm going to have here. And it's part of a study that was funded by the USAID Resilient Waters Program, together with Stellenbosch University Center for Sustainability Transitions, where I was more interested in looking at obviously the interactions between state and non-state actors in water governance, and having identified two problem areas in water governance in general, water policy and governance, especially across transboundary water basins. The first problem area that is identifiable is that water governance tends to focus more on state-centric approach. Usually we'll see that our people that sit on our committees for water governance are mostly state actors. There isn't a huge involvement of non-state actors. So it's mostly state-centric. It's your ministries, it's your various committees that are established or funded through formal state processes and recognized actors of the state, forgoing the role of non-state actors in water governance, including even traditional authorities, NGOs, all sorts of non-state, even individual communities, all sorts of non-state actors. But before the state was a state, yeah, because transboundary river systems and groundwater systems have been there for many ages before civil laws came into being. And most of these basins, especially the Okavango River Basin, where the study took place, is that this basin is predominantly rural. And most people still live in accordance with customary laws, your traditional authority, kind of like regulations. So it's predominantly rural, and customary laws take precedence, especially when you move away from areas that are closer to urban areas, such as Rundu, or other than that, customary laws take precedence over civil laws. The civil laws are now your acts, your national laws, and that kind of a thing. And the customary laws is basically the norms and the values that people have lived in accordance with for many years before the state became a state, before the Westphalian state that we know, before Namibia became Namibia, before Botswana became Botswana, Angola, before all sorts of things like that. People lived in accordance with us, with the customary laws. And now it was sort of like a sudden move in a way to actually move people away from customary laws and customary ways of living to legal systems, while they still are very much bound to customary laws. And especially in the case of Namibia, where I am from, customary law and civil law are given equal importance under the Namibian constitution, at least in practice. But we'll see in theory, but we'll see that in theory, in practice, civil laws, your Water Act, tends to take precedence at the disadvantage of I wouldn't really say disadvantage, perhaps that's a very strong word, but foregoing the role of customary laws and customary institutions and various sorts of non-state actors. And so it was very important to look at how legal pluralism, your pluralistic governance setup, you have now your customary law, you have your civil law, and then because it's a transboundary basin, you also have to be cognizant of international water law, elements of public international law. So all these types of governance systems, your different types of laws and your different types of actors, state actors and non-state actors, how do they actually work together to mediate hydropolitics in the basins, and how do they influence water governance altogether? I'll focus more on the issues of policy, especially speaking directly to integrated water resource management policy or IWRM related policies. I'll speak to issues of law, plural legal structures, and I'll speak to local knowledge, indigenous local knowledge, and how we can decolonize the way we do science, how we can decolonize the way we go about water governance in transboundary basins, and how we can decolonize how we communicate science and policy. Am I still audible?
Yes, you are. Can you see
Yes.
the screen? You just have to guide Sechaba
Yeah.
so that he can navigate. Thank you, Doctor.
All right. I'm now on the background screen. So despite all these challenges of water governance that I've just highlighted now, and putting into consideration the impacts of aridity compounded by climate change, and that actually has huge or direct impacts on physical water scarcity itself, that is absolute lack of the water resource. You also have economic water scarcity. This is now all your governance challenges, funding issues, some of them that were also highlighted by the previous speaker, basically human-made issues to do with scarcity that is mostly human in nature. That is the economic water scarcity, and that is where this presentation finds premise today. So by 2050, these are projections that these countries, Namibia, Angola, and Botswana, they're expected to experience extreme water stress. These are just projections. But despite all these threats, there still exists a state of confusion when it comes to water governance in transboundary basins, to do with fragmented institutional structures that I have just highlighted, your state actors and non-state actors, and the interactions between the two that are probably not properly managed, your limited capacity at local level for water governance, unclear allocation of roles and responsibilities between actors, state actors and non-state actors, poor management of interactions between stakeholders. I think we have highlighted that, and multiple and divergent actors, interest and discordancy between formal and informal water institutions, and inadequate political will to support water governance. I'll come back to political will when we discuss IWRM policy translation and diffusion. So to deal with the complexities, most countries that we know, including in SADC, have adopted IWRM frameworks for water governance, adaptive governance, and probably a wide array of other water governance approaches, whether you're dealing with groundwater or surface water. But we all know that IWRM reigns supreme among all those water governance approaches, almost leaving no room at all for alternative modes or frameworks or approaches to water governance in shared waters. So while this may vary in theory and some specific context, the discordances that we have already highlighted, it is important to then answer why this disconnects between actors might exist legal pluralism is already one that we have highlighted. While they may be present in current governance structures, how this disconnects between state actors, your governments, and non-state actors, or informal institutions, how this disconnect may influence decision-making processes linked to equitable and sustainable water governance of shared waters, and what linkages may then exist despite all these breaking points and disconnects and discordances. What linkages are then there for optimizing synergies between actors, state actors and non-state actors, and between civil laws, customary laws, and even international law? This is just probably not a necessary slide, but the court has a governing umbrella that is OCACOM is an autonomous body, but even OCACOM itself has adopted an IWRM approach to water governance. So as the countries, the riparian countries that reside under OCACOM, the three ones that were mentioned, but perhaps IWRM in itself is also in part, and I'm being very sensitive here because I know how passionate we all are about integrated water resource management. I know the level of support that IWRM receives locally and globally, but perhaps we need to also look at other governance approaches and say, perhaps these discordances in water governance approaches in part have to do with the IWRM concept, and not that it relates to diffusion, global policy diffusion, and the translation. As we all know, IWRM is a top-down governance framework that emanates from the Dublin principles, and actually the 4 Dublin principles are the building blocks of IWRM. And as we all, I think, know, is that the global stage has set how shall I say the setting in motion of IWRM, and actually compels national governments and water governance institutions to put in place IWRM policies and water use efficiency policies by 2005. And so by the end of that period, most countries and water institutes and have had already put in place IWRM principles, and Namibia is one of such kind in which that policy, the IWRM policy, has diffused from the global stage into the national government.
Dr. Shifidi, I think we might have lost.
Yeah, I think so too, Katie. I think we lost her.
Yes, I see she is okay, I see she is back on the call.
I don't
Yes.
know at what stage I lost you.
It's actually, I think, like 2 seconds or 3 seconds ago, so not much, actually.
Yeah, so I was speaking
can...
of IWRM diffusion. Were we there?
Yes, on what slide number are you at now? So Sechaba can just move the slides to that number.
IWRM diffusion, policy diffusion and translation. Slide 6.
All right, thank you.
And
you
I'm
may
almost
proceed.
done. Apologies.
Okay.
Yes, one of the challenges with IWRM lies in policy diffusion, global policy diffusion, that is of IWRM, which happened mostly through coercive of using soft power. These involve power asymmetries where policy preferences are imposed on weaker countries through soft power via ideation or channels As I have already mentioned, these was through the global platforms, including the Johannesburg Summit, which then not instructed or compelled that national governments and water institutions should put in place IWRM policies by 2005. And most countries have since complied. And so from a global policy diffusion perspective, IWRM is seen as diffusion. And policy transfer should actually be seen as a continuous transformation of negotiation and then enactment. It should be negotiated over time with local communities, with all stakeholders involved. Because as we know, water itself is quite a political. Water it's not just a natural resource. It's also very societal. It is social. It is very political. It's a cultural issue. So you will see that local communities actually related differently to water and water resources. They, they accord different values to water resources. Some see it as a spiritual, cleansing, healing entity. Some see it as part of nature, that it has all sorts of different values that are equally important for the ecosystem and for the people that live in it, including religious values. So if it is then a political and societal and cultural issue, and then we then impose IWRM principles and compel that, no, the 4 Dublin principles, this is gender, what are the 4 Dublin principles? But I understand we should all know them, but
perhaps you can just try to conclude.
Yes, the lessons learned, I think a deeper exploration of existing transboundary governance mechanisms is needed to go beyond IWRM and how we do research, so as to even include issues of indigenous local knowledge, because indigenous local knowledge is still seen as secondary to book knowledge. And as I have alluded in, I don't know if you heard that part, water is social, it's cultural, and these are all elements of indigenous local knowledge. These are all elements that have, that board on customary laws. So legal pluralism, definitely challenging to operationalize and practice and remains a theoretical construct that hinders adaptive water governance for sustainable development. And so we need to include IWRM in formalizing indigenous local knowledge and in making sure that customary law and the norms and the values and all ways of knowing, all ways of being, and all ways of doing are actually integrated in one governance framework and one governance system for a holistic approach to water governance, whether you're dealing with groundwater or surface water. In IWRM, I think I have to also be wary of top-down water governance approaches that are adopted from the global arena into national policies without any creativity into actually contextualizing these international governance frameworks into local and ground them into local realities. So that even later on when we develop intervention strategies in industry or produce knowledge for academia or engage in policy for politicians and decision makers, that we then have consulted or taken an approach that is grounded in local realities rather than top-down approaches based on the understanding of the few well-informed scientists elsewhere on the global stage. And this is also to highlight, and I'm glad that the previous speaker has also highlighted it, that IWRM and any other governance framework, water governance framework, it's no panacea. There's no such a thing as one size fit all water governance eel, and we must just be creative enough, I think, as young scholars or aspiring professionals, to say, how do we decolonize these water governance frameworks, these water governance systems, even how the laws are, how the policies are. How do we decolonize how we do research and how
Well, it is quite unfortunate due to the network. These are the realities we have to live with, but nonetheless, I believe Dr. Shifidi's presentation has really deepened our understanding, particularly when it comes to civil laws, customary laws. Ms. Rosa Domingos, who is a young professional as well, and she will be presenting on more on capacity development. So the title is quite catchy: Skill Up, Stand Out, Leveraging on MOOCs for Self-Development. I'd like to introduce Ms. Domingos. Ms. Domingos is a hydrogeologist with a focus on groundwater quality and quantity. She is currently pursuing her PhD in soil physics at the University of Rostock. Her research aims to enhance our understanding of coastal peatlands and their impacts on groundwater and adjacent water systems. She has experience working on groundwater resources management and coastal oceanic health at national, Department of Water and Sanitation, as well as international levels. Rosa holds a master's degree in water science and engineering from the UNESCO IHE Delft and holds undergraduate degrees in geology and geohydrology. She is passionate about sustainable water resource management, especially in addressing challenges related to climate change and extreme events in rural areas of developing countries. Thank you very much, Ms. Rosa. The virtual floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Getty, for introducing me. Thank you, Sichaba, and our two doctors for their impactful presentations on their current work with respect to integrated water resources management. It reminds me of a course that I actually did a few weeks ago called IWRM for Climate Resilience, and the presentations given before me really I revisited one of those topics with respect to the different dimensions of IWRM, be it financing, institutions, policy, and then advancing technologies to mitigate climate action. And with that said, I'd like to get into my presentation, which is, as mentioned now, Scale Up, Stand Out, leveraging MOOCs for self-development. So a little bit of a background before I go into what MOOCs are and the benefits. I want to start off by, just give me a moment, sorry. It looks like, did I just unshare?
So we can still see the first page, the title page.
Okay, so I'm trying to move. Oh, there you go. Okay, so okay, I'll begin. So a little bit into my background. So in 2024, last year, I had a downward slow pace in terms of my research, be it data analysis, be it scientific writing. And I noticed that I had pockets of time where I could utilize to maximize what I already knew about groundwater management, or just learn a new topic within the confines of groundwater management and also climate action, whilst incorporating SDG 6. So then I wanted to actually go into learning because I wanted to stay up to date to sectoral with regard to sectoral developments, right? So in as much as I'm now within the confines of soil physics, so within the more superficial levels with regard to the depth to groundwater, I still wanted to be in the know and up to date with what's happening with other professionals who are in, let's say, groundwater management, groundwater policy, groundwater remote sensing, modeling. And therefore, I looked into these courses for ways to keep me updated with my respective specialization. So specifically, in terms of growing into my sectoral specialization, I looked into integrated water resources management. So I worked as a geohydrologist in the Department of Water and Sanitation, and I was specifically within the Integrated Water Resources Management Directorate. And within that directorate, I was working with people who are in, let's say, riverine system management, data collection and management, as well as wetlands conservation. But I was specifically within the geohydrology subdirectorate. So I made sure to quarterly or bi-monthly monitor my boreholes within different zones, let's say agricultural zones, domestic zones. I made sure to work on WULAs or water use license applications, where I produce recommendations on these different water use license applications that seek to abstract water for irrigation, domestic use, or industries. So therefore, I made sure that even after my PhD, what I want to keep in mind is still have this WRM approach with regards to groundwater management. So with that being said, and understanding that groundwater does not exist in isolation, but is in fact part of a larger hydrological system, it is quite important to then involve other water-related specializations so that you have a holistic view of the hydrological cycle. Because as colleagues, we deal with other colleagues who are in respective water-related sciences, and we should now be able to have the tools or the jargon to translate what we see in our fields or in our line of work, so that it's readily consumed, readily unpacked for them to understand what we mean when we talk about sustainable yield, when we talk about, for example, manage aquifer recharge. And with that being said, I looked towards courses that would reflect my my status quo, which is being a PhD candidate, but also made sure to augment what I currently knew about groundwater, and also increase my knowledge in terms of, let's say, management and competencies in general, such as collaboration. And in order to do that, I decided to look into massive open online courses, or MOOCs in short. So what are MOOCs? MOOCs are free and affordable online courses. Most of them are free, and this is why it's called Massive Open, because this is an open source platform where you are learning or having information brought to you from an open source perspective, where it's free for you to learn. It is flexible in the sense that it's self-paced, so therefore you can take your time. It suits well within, or you can schedule it to suit your time schedule, as well as it provides a wealth of information, whether you are a young professional, a seasoned professional, or a student in the making. Every single course that's currently available that's open source does cater to anybody within these different categories. Also, the purpose of these MOOC these mocks is to make sure that we close the gap, the knowledge gap that is currently prevalent amongst, let's say, students who would actually like to touch base with professionals or other students of other professions, perhaps within the context of water management or outside the context of water management. It is to enable professionals and students to adapt to current trends. Right now, the form of adaptability that I see is with respect to climate action. A lot of research that is being put out there, that's being published, and what I'm dealing with right now in my current research is looking into enforcing a climate rationale. So therefore, as you are conducting your STEM-based research, there should be an element where you cater climate action as a form of avenue where you will bring a solution that combats climate change. And lastly, it offers professional development. It really does not matter if you want to refresh your knowledge of a particular subject matter. It really does still provide an avenue where you will grow as a professional. It builds you with the tools that you need so that when you walk into a conference, when you walk into a webinar, you are able to touch base with another person off of the basis or from the basis of having learned something a week ago within a 2-hour period from an open source course. And we have different types of avenues and platforms that allow for these, and all of the platforms that I've shown here, these different icons, provide free open source courses. So you have, for example, IHE Delta. This is the institution that I studied at, where I acquired my master's degree. And the open source courses that they are now furnishing is something quite new, and it's something that I found out quite recently as I was developing this presentation. So it's really quite good because, for example, for someone who has, or for someone like myself who is an alumni, I can now go back and refresh and kind of look back into the jargon that was used to explain certain types of contexts. And apart from IHE, we have the World Bank Group as well, which is a multilateral bank. And they have a wealth of courses that you could learn from. And also, for example, CAPNet, which is a, I would say, a sister or an output of UNDP. Apart from that, when we look at these mock courses, we also need to understand why they matter. And there are several reasons why they matter, but I've put on 2, and that is the first one being the flexibility. I think in this day and age where courses or prices with regards to tuitions have become quite expensive, this is one avenue where you can really put some time and some effort into to provide yourself or to build your current wealth of knowledge. And so therefore it would cater to you in terms of flexibility. I know as students, you might not have time to do certain things, but if you do cater, for example, 20 minutes or 30 minutes of your time per day, it does build up. The wealth of knowledge does build up so that it helps you develop in your, I would say, academic or professional career. And the second reason of why mocks matter is the fact that it supports a sectoral adaptation. We are currently moving, whether it be a government, whether it be international or private institutions, into the age of climate action. So there are a lot of incentives by these different organizations for staff members, for students to incorporate climate action, climate adaptation, climate mitigation. And for an example of this is looking into, for example, the World Bank's 2024-2025 fiscal year, where they have planned to commit 45% of their financing into climate action and splitting that equally between adaptation and mitigation. So there's already a financing arm that is looking towards ensuring that adaptation and mitigation is going to be something that's going to be propelled in projects globally. And I think that is why it is important, because there is a shift where we, or international organizations and local organizations as well, are trying to incorporate adaptive strategies into combating climate change. For me, for example, as you see on the slide, there are several courses that are conducted in 2024 that I took part of, that I acquired in 2024. And you can see 3 of them that are listed over here on slide or block number 2, be it like NBS or nature-based solutions. And this was a new one for me because in as much as I understood what nature-based solutions were, I really was fascinated to understand how they are incorporated in terms of DRR, or disaster risk management under climate resilience. I also participated in a course called Water Quality Monitoring and Assessment for Groundwater. As a refresher, most of the terminologies that were used in this course I was quite familiar with, but it was quite good to still stay up to date with these topics as I see myself going back into specializing specifically into groundwater. And lastly, I also I took a course in project management. This is one avenue that is essential for me in a sense, because I want to work in international organizations where project management is a huge aspect of how they deliver on their targets within a fiscal year. And so with that being said, I'd like to introduce 5 courses that you could look into within the theme of groundwater policy and governance, as well as one mock within the context of management. And I'm going to first start off with water accounting and auditing, and this course aims to strengthen local water management and data-driven decision-making. I put the QR code for all the other 4 courses as well that I'll be showing, so that if you are willing or if you're interested, you can snap that and then it will take you directly to the link where more information is given. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to move through to the next course. As you read through, all of these courses are self-paced, they are free, and also they do provide a form of certification that again would look good in the sense if you'd want to post it on your LinkedIn and have recruiters or other colleagues see that you are building yourself up on your own at your own time and pace. The second course that I have lined up for you today is the Water Resources Management and Policy, and this course is provided by Carissa. Carissa has actually a feature where you could actually, from their website, share your completed course onto LinkedIn. I think that is a good touch to having completed a course. And this course is mainly supposed to equip the learners of policy-driven approaches for water governance. So they don't just look into groundwater, but all facets of groundwater compartments within the hydrological cycle. And then the third course we have is Governance for Transboundary Freshwater Security. And this course looks into addressing freshwater security challenges throughout transboundary cooperation, And this is exactly what our 2 presenters looked into as they presented their own work. So I do think this would match quite nicely if you do find interest in taking on this course. As you can see, it takes on 2 SDGs, 6 and 14, and both are water. So I think this would be a good touch within the confines of today's theme. The 4th course is that of Governance for Transboundary Freshwater and Security. Yeah, I think it's a different course, and it aims to guide professionals in developing equitable IWRM strategies, again, within the confines of today's theme. Last but not least, this is the last course that I mentioned that strays away from the theme, but looks into the competency aspect of a young professional, and that is the project management aspect. And with this, it aims to equip professionals with project design and management skills. And this is quite important as a student right now, where you need to manage your time, and also as a professional when it comes to meeting deadline for certain assignments or projects. And tips for success, as I completed about 5 of these courses last year, is to dedicate or set learning goals. These courses provide a suitable amount of time for you to complete. So they would say perhaps 3 hours per week for 5 weeks. But you could set your own pace. Perhaps you can finish a segment of the module in a day instead of 3 hours, and continue and finish it within 5 days. It all depends on how you would like to discretize your time so that it suits your schedule. Secondly, engage in discussions and networks. These platforms have a networking pool where you can discuss with other people who are also actively taking on the course. And last but not least, apply these courses in real world life projects or discourse, or as you go to conferences or webinars, you can discuss on these topics and touch base and see what other people think and how they use their jargon to explain away concepts within what you've learned in these courses. And in conclusion, I'd like to add that, or in summary, that these courses do aim to provide essential knowledge. So it is up to you as an individual to put in your time and to really look into what they provide, because essentially these courses pull from different sources of knowledge from universities, policyholders, and then they amalgamate all of this information into a course that better suits you. So take your time in looking for a course that really suits what you want, and then move forward with that. Last but not least, enrolling in these courses will enhance the policy understanding aspects and your career growth, which is truly what has been shown, or what I would like you to look into as you look into the QR codes and learn more about these courses. And with that, that is my conclusion, and I would like to thank you for your audience. Thank you.